The Ozarks, 1867. Picture it. Dust-choked roads twisting through forests older than the war itself. Riders pass through, weary, sunburnt, desperate for water. They find a cabin. Two brothers stand outside, their well brimming with spring water. Travelers drink and vanish. Days later, horses wander into town alone, reins dragging like severed veins, saddles empty. The men, women, and children who drank never returned. The Lister brothers kept serving their water. And the earth around their cabin grew swollen with the stench of rot. Missouri, fresh from the Civil War, was a scarred landscape. The Ozarks were wilderness, raw and untamed, haunted by deserters, bandits, and memory. No sheriff could cover the endless miles, no church could claim all the souls. Roads westward opened, but at a cost. Every mile devoured lives. Hospitality meant survival. A stranger's well could be salvation. And yet, in the Listers' hands, that salvation was twisted, poisoned, turned into covenant. Elias and Jonah Lister were quiet men, tall, sun-baked, with eyes too still for comfort. They appeared after the war ended, building a home by a spring that seemed to never run dry. Townsfolk noticed their silence, their absence at church, the way their smiles never reached their eyes. But they offered water, and weary travelers were grateful. In 1867, gratitude drowned suspicion. By the time questions were asked, too many names were already gone. A veteran named Samuel Pike was the first to raise concern. He wrote a letter describing the odd taste of the Listers' water, sweet, metallic, like drinking from bloodied iron. He never mailed it. Days later, he vanished. His horse was found tied near their land, still saddled. Search parties scoured the forest. Dogs whined and refused to approach the brothers' well. Elias explained calmly, Pike had moved west. Bandits, perhaps, accidents, maybe, but in his voice there was something too certain, too rehearsed. Not everyone who drank was taken. A widow traveling with her children remembered the well. The brothers urged her to drink deeply, insisting it would ease her journey. She sipped once, then stopped. Her children refused the taste, saying it burned like pennies. She left at sunrise, shaken. Later, she swore the brothers' eyes followed her into the dark, as if disappointed she had not finished the cup. Her testimony was ignored. Women's words often were. Years later, a courthouse clerk found a ledger among the county's forgotten archives. A plain book, weather-worn inside. Names, dozens of them, families. Wagon parties. Next to each, a mark, circles, crosses, smears of ink. No record of departure. No sign they ever reached another town. The ledger was briefly logged, then disappeared from files entirely. Removed, erased, as if someone higher had no interest in remembering. Sheriff Albright rode to the cabin with deputies. The brothers welcomed him. Their cabin was immaculate, their barn empty, nothing unusual, until Albright approached the well. Jonah placed his hand on the rope. That's God's water, he whispered, not for men to look upon. The sheriff backed away, rattled. Weeks later, his own niece vanished on the road near the cabin. Albright resigned with a single line written in his letter, "The well is deeper than we are." Folklorists studying the case decades later found parallels to older Ozark traditions. Springs were sacred, portals between realms. To drink was to bind. Wells were believed to house spirits, sometimes benevolent, often not. What if the Listers believed their well was not a gift, but a mouth to be fed? Perhaps the missing travelers were offerings, sacrament. Their bodies broken down to keep the water flowing sweet and clear. In 1872, storms brought floods that softened the earth near the Lister land. Locals found bones rising from the clay, dozens, men, women, children, some shattered, some burned, none whole. The stench spread for miles. The county ordered the property burned to ash, but the well remained, its stones blackened but intact, its water still cold, still pouring, as if no fire could sever what lay beneath. One account survives in orphanage archives. A boy, age 12, traveling with a preacher's caravan. He claimed he saw the Listers laugh as grown men collapsed after drinking their water. The boy fled through the trees, running until dawn. No one believed him. "Children lie," said the preacher, but decades later the boy, now a patient in a sanitarium, drew wells on every wall of his cell, wells and hands reaching upward from their depths. By fall of 1867, the community had enough. Men rode out to arrest the Listers, but the cabin was empty, beds unmade, sheds open. Tracks in mud led to the well, then stopped. Some swore the brothers had fled west. Others believed they had descended willingly into the water, bodies swallowed by the covenant they served. Neither were ever seen again. What disturbed many was the church's reaction. Local ministers urged silence. Let the matter rest, they said. Some recalled seeing the Listers meeting quietly with clergy before they vanished. Sermons from that era survive, strangely alter, references to purification through thirst and the waters that cleanse the flesh from the soul. To read them now is to feel less a sermon and more an alibi. Historians digging into county files found nothing. Census lists erased the brothers' names by 1,880. Court records were missing, witness accounts excised. It was not neglect. It was surgery, intentional, precise, deliberate. Someone wanted the brothers forgotten, but silence leaves echoes, and the holes in history say more than the words ever could. Surveyors in the 1920s claimed to stumble upon the well, overgrown but intact. They drank from it. 2 were dead within weeks, their skin blistered and blackened from within. Their field notes describe voices at night, like men calling up from a cavern. After their deaths, the notes were confiscated, the coordinates lost or destroyed. The well once again slipped back into legend. Children whispered about the brothers who served more than water. Parents dismissed it as superstition, but the parallels between folklore and missing records are undeniable. Too many bones, too many erased names. If this was only a story, why erase the documents? Why silence the testimony? Myths fade, erasures scream. The well as symbol recurs across cultures. A mouth, a womb, a grave. To drink is to commune. The Listers' well was no exception. It was not water but contract. Each sip bound the traveler to something unseen. Their deaths were not murders in the ordinary sense. They were offerings drawn down into a mouth that is never closed. This case exposes not only 2 men but an entire system complicit. Churches, courts, county records, each chose silence or worse, participation. If the covenant was real, the brothers were not alone. They were servants in a chain of forgotten American rituals, where sacrifice hid beneath the language of Scripture, feeding something older than the nation itself. To kill is one horror, to weaponize thirst is another. We drink to live. To deny water is cruelty, but to offer water laced with covenant is violation at its deepest root. Every throat that swallowed was betrayed at the core of human trust. That is why the Listers linger, not because they killed, but because they desecrated the act of drinking itself. In 1949, an amateur historian searching for the well vanished. His notes survive, the voices are real, they are closer, they still serve. His car was found idling at the forest's edge, headlights burning into black trees. His body was never recovered. His final words, "The thirst is not mine, it belongs to them." The Lister brothers' case is still labeled unsolved. A cold file buried beneath lost records and local silence. But some in the Ozarks still whisper of the well, always brimming, always cold. Travelers still vanish on forgotten roads, and thirst never ends. So if you find yourself in the Ozarks and 2 silent men offer you water, remember the ledger of names. Remember the orphan's drawings. Remember the sheriff's warning. The well is deeper than we are.